What the hell's going on with Disco Elysium? There's multiple sequels on the go, but is there?
I wish I knew, Scott. You know, a guy waits 5 years for 2 successors to Disco Elysium, and then you get 3 in the same day. You wait and you hope and you pray that what happened with the original team. I always feel like I'm pronouncing this wrong. It's like Zaum.
Yeah, it's like ZA/UM.
UM, yeah,
I think
yeah.
I'll say Zaum, but
I normally say Zaum, but I just don't know. And I know this bit's going to go out on the YouTube, so people might kill me for mispronouncing it because I feel like I need to do more research.
We wouldn't be the first.
It's as confusing as it is to pronounce the name, the situation that's going on. So obviously, if you haven't heard, if you don't know, there were a bunch of like messy legal issues following the release of the original Disco Elysium that led to a bunch of the creatives leaving, lawsuits being signed, and you know, it just got very messy. One of the people who left was the original director, Robert Kurvitz.
Yes.
Him and someone else from the original team, Alexander Rostov, formed Red Info Games to make a spiritual successor all the way back in 2022. The original team that was still at Zaum, or Zaum.
Let's go Zaum.
Yes. I told you, very messy. They initially stayed on under the original developers to make a proper sequel, which was then cancelled, and then a spin-off was announced that was supposed to be a kind of standalone, smaller title, and then we learned earlier this year that was cancelled as well. So what remains of the original team has struggled to get an actual sequel to Disco Elysium, even greenlit at this point. But on the game's 5th year anniversary, just before we broke for the weekend, it was announced that 3 different studios, most of which are made either by some amalgamation of ex-developers along with industry talent, 3 different studios with 3 different spiritual successors that have been announced. I'll quickly run through them for you. First, we've got Longdew Games, who were making an RPG, and this studio is made up of some ex-devs from the original team, but also talent from Rockstar and Bungie. We don't know anything about this RPG yet, other than the fact that it is a successor to Disco Elysium, and it's going to be an RPG. Then later on that day, Dark Math Games announced XXX Night Shift, and we actually do know what this is to a better degree because it got a trailer, it's got a Steam page. The Steam page synopsis reads, quote, "Welcome to World's End, Mount Hope, Antarctica, 2086 CE. You're a patrol operative, and it's entirely up to you how you spend your polar nights. Solving gruesome murders, breaking sacred hearts, or just killing bloody time in this true detective RPG, XXX Night Shift."
That's a lot like Disco.
It's a lot like Disco. If you watch the trailer for this, the art style is incredibly reminiscent of Disco. I think this team, at least in part, has some of the original artists from Disco, so it's very immediately visually similar. If you can remember the chat box that Disco had on the right-hand side, and the kind of sketchy, abstracty art that came along with it, it's pretty much one for one in that regard. But it sounds cool, like this idea of being locked away in a strange kind of alternate history or alternate future Antarctica sounds cool enough. The trailer looks cool enough. And then just before the day was out, Scott, we got one final thing that was announced, and this is from a team that's called Summer Eternal. And I don't know if you saw this one, but this one is actually exciting. This looked hard.
I got tagged in I don't even know. I don't know what's going on anymore.
This looked hard as hell. This wasn't even necessary. It was a game announcement, but they released it essentially as like a manifesto of how they're going to approach game development, and it was as incendiary as you can expect from some of the people who made Disco Elysium. It was very much about art being compromised by the current sort of business climate that we're in, and how much creativity is being strangled out, and how how important the workers are and whatnot. It's a very hard as hell manifesto. It's worth a read for sure. But on top of that, it also came with this like stunning artwork as well. It had this like striking red and black aesthetic. It just looked like it made an imprint, even though there wasn't like an actual game trailer attached to it. It just looked like it was a strong foot forward, put it that way. It left a lasting impression. So if you're keeping count, this means we have currently no Disco Elysium 2 in production, nor a spin-off, at least that we know of, and we have 4 different teams producing 4 spiritual successors, one including the original directors, but every other one also including ex-devs of various capacities. So, like law of averages, one of these has got to be good, right?
Yeah. Like rule of threes. Like, which one of them has the directors on it?
That was the Red Info game. So that's the one we already knew about from a few years ago.
Right,
that's I think they've gone into business with NetEase.
Right. That'll definitely end well.
Yeah, but we don't really know anything else about that.
Okay.
That's been a few years in the making. That, but obviously with the lawsuits and stuff on and all of those being solved, I imagine I don't know how much work will have been.
There's like
done
everything
so
with Disco is crazy. Like I know the original, it originally came out on Steam, originally on PC. It came to consoles later. Like the I think 2019 is when it came up, but console people didn't play it until 2021 or
2020, I think.
2020. That game didn't feel like it should have gone bigger than one game. Like it felt like a one and done. Like not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's like there's so much put into it. Like I know that it was in development. I think it was like 7 years or something. It's like a labor of love kind of thing, by the original team. And then it is so multifaceted. It has that extremely cool like thought system where like your character's an amnesiac and you're figuring out ways to think, and that let them play into everything from like violence and insults to political spectrum stuff. And it was like we loved that thing. Like, and the way it's like essential. Like if you care about art or anything, just play Disco Elysium. It's phenomenal. And then in the years after that, the weird lawsuits started to happen. Like different members of the team left. There's a documentary by People Make Games that dove into quite a lot of it. That I was taken as like the authority on what went down. But I think you know a bit more of that about the wider stuff than me.
Just like there's some other companion pieces that other people have made that kind of also like analyzes the documentary, which is worth looking into, because like I said, it is a very, very messy situation.
And then like there was there's a lot of different like legal, like different companies coming in there saying, well, we own the idea behind Disco Elysium, we own the property, the franchise, whatever, which is where a lot of the thorny stuff comes in. But then you've got I'm sure there was at one point there was a TV show mentioned.
That's still happening. That was the first idea that something weird was going on, because you have this game that is very political. And then suddenly you're getting they partnered with Amazon to make either a film or a TV show with them. We don't know anything about that since, but it was like, oh, that's a strange pick for this game that started as this like very politically charged like art collective piece, and then you're kind of partnering with this huge conglomerate. It just always felt like, whose choice was that? I don't know.
Yeah, that's
no
my
one
thing.
really knows, I suppose.
And it's like it feels like the big corpo 101 thing. Like at the minute, I'm listening to a lot of stuff that's happening with Jason Schreier's new. I'm listening to like a podcast by Nextlander who had Jason Schreier on, who wrote a book on the history of Blizzard, and he's talking about the history of Blizzard, how it started as a small team, it got bigger, the Activision acquisition. Bobby Kotick was like franchise this stuff out, do more things, and ruin the core of what got them there in the first place, which just seems to be like business 101 at a certain level. And Disco's having its moment with that at the minute. And like it's interesting that a fracture of that are the other like staff members who have left, formed other projects, and then like you said, specifically made like public manifestos like we are not being constrained by this anymore. Because I think, to round it all the way back around again, one of the best things about Disco Elysium was how authored and fresh and unique and uncorpo it felt. Like you couldn't get a more directly opposite to the likes of a Suicide Squad, an Anthem, whatever, like really eat low-hanging fruit type games or projects than Disco Elysium, which is why for me, I would kind of rather it just be in a cocoon by itself, preserved, and it's there for all to love. Yeah. Because the second you try and pull it a thread to do more of it, I don't think you can. I mean, demonstrably you can't because the team's not there anymore.
Yeah.
But what do you think about the way that we're going?
It's interesting. I am looking forward to these games. I hope that they're good. It's interesting what you say there about Disco being this kind of one and done thing. To me, the tantalizing thing when I was looking into the interviews that the team was doing after that game launched was how they were kind of, because it was like, they didn't know if the game was going to be a success. The whole idea was like the world of Disco had been involved, it had been like created before the game. So it was, if I recall correctly, it was Robert Kurvitz's like sort of in collaboration with other people, but like they had the lore mapped out, they had the world mapped out, they had different interpretations of it in different mediums and stuff. So what excited me was when they were talking about Disco, they were kind of quick to point out that this was just like one tiny piece of a huge world that they had, that they were wanting to explore. Like this is in the game, it's Revachol, and it's like it's a forgotten town essentially, just kind of this weird blip on the map that doesn't seemingly have any significance to the overall world that it's a part of. So I always found that fascinating. Like, where do we go? Like, what does the wider world look like? But that's going to be interesting now because these teams obviously can't use that wealth of lore, so they're going to have to do something else because it was like this, like I said, there's like an art collective before it was a game. So that's going to be interesting going forward to see what they come up with outside of this huge world that they had previously written. It's funny what you mentioned there, though, about like it being so often. I think that's definitely true. It's interesting if you go down like, I don't know, like the auteur theory or something, because I think what was cool about the original game is, yeah, you've got, you know, Robert Kurvitz, and it's maybe his sort of like passion project that he's brought into the team, but like so many different members of that team, from like the everything from like the voice acting that eventually made its way over to like the art style, to the people who were responsible for writing other parts of the game that became like iconic or different characters. Like that is such a collaboration, even though there might have been like one person we kind of point to and go, oh, it was this guy's work. And I think that's exciting as well, because it's like that team was clearly talented like through and through. So that kind of makes me excited to see what they can do, even if it's away from the world of Disco, and like taking different elements, taking certain art styles or types of gameplay systems that were in the original, maybe didn't even make it into the original, but people were passionate about, and kind of seeing those spin-off. I wonder if any of them kind of like match the level of that collaborative process that made the original game, or whether you kind of, it feels like there's a missing piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, that's my thing, is that I think I need to just consciously or cognitively figure it out as these projects roll out, and as they figure out what the hell to do with the Disco Elysium name, because it can just be a name. Like, that's all it can be, kind of thing. I don't think I can divorce that necessarily. But what do you think of the TV show? Like, do you think they retell like the Dubois story, or like do you do something? Maybe they do a wider thing in the wider world. Like,
I don't know. I don't know how you do a TV show.
I don't even want a TV.
Don't know.
Who wants that?
I don't know. Like,
it's like so much about why it's a good thing is that it's fundamentally interactive and playing off what you're doing.
Literally, like, you know, so much of it not only is. God, like that relies on that interactivity, relies on you imprinting a certain personality on the main character. You know, you can be like a diehard communist in the game, you can be a mad fascist in the game. How do you square those things in a way that makes sense for an accessible TV show that's going to be 8 to 10 episodes a season?
A multiverse,
like you can do the core story. I think like there is a kind of like a rock solid narrative of Disco Elysium surrounding its murder mystery, which is what it's about, and kind of solving that, and the different factions. Like the different factions don't change depending on your choices in the game. It's kind of just who you are and your relationship to the world. But that's part of the magic of it, and it gets so surreal with that, and it is based around like the player's interactivity. Like, one of the genius things about Disco Elysium, I think, is that it's a great piece of art, it's unbelievably well written, but it works so well because it is a game, and because it does give you kind of a certain level of authorship over it. And I think, I don't know how the hell you translate that to a TV show without losing kind of like that spark of magic from it. Obviously, like I said, it's kind of like this multimedia project anyway, but will they be able to do it justice if it's like a completely separate team, and if it's like Amazon themselves getting their own writers and directors in to do an interpretation? Like, that seems kind of mad. I don't know.
Yeah.